April 2025 was not just another month in America's criminal justice system. It marked a chilling reminder that the death penalty is still very much alive in parts of this country. In a span of just 4 weeks, for men who had spent years, sometimes decades, on death row were led down the cold, narrow hallways of execution chambers. For them, time had run out. But behind each name was a story, of violence, of tragedy, of legal battles, and in some cases of regret. Some went to their deaths proclaiming innocence. Others apologized to the families they destroyed. All were given one final meal, one final chance to speak, one final breath. This video is not about glorifying crime. It's about exploring the lives and fates of the people the state condemned to die. Who were they before the headlines? What exactly did they do? Did they fight for their lives until the very end, or did they accept their fate? From Florida to Texas, from South Carolina to Alabama, these executions were not random. Each followed a trail of blood, court documents, years of appeals, and the heavy weight of public opinion. Today, we're diving into the stories of the men executed in April 2025, starting with James Osgood, a man who committed one of Alabama's most disturbing crimes, then later told the courts he deserved to die for it. This is death row, unfiltered, unforgiving, and final. Welcome to the last chapter of their lives. Welcome to our channel. Please kindly like, subscribe, and comment. This will help us grow our community. The first man on our list today is James Osgood, Alabama. Executed April 24, 2025, lethal injection. In the quiet town of Chilton County, Alabama, a crime unfolded in 2010 that would leave an indelible mark on the community and eventually lead to the execution of James Osgood. This is a story of a man who, after years of legal battles and personal reflection, chose to accept his fate and face the ultimate punishment for his actions. James Osgood, born in 1970, had a troubled upbringing marked by abuse and instability. Despite these early challenges, he managed to build a life for himself, forming relationships and attempting to find his place in the world. However, beneath the surface, Osgood harbored dark fantasies that would eventually manifest in a heinous crime. On October 23, 2010, 44-year-old Tracy Lynn Brown, a recently divorced mother and cousin to Osgood's girlfriend, Tanya Van Dyke, was found dead in her home. Concerned co-workers had alerted authorities after she failed to show up for work. The discovery was gruesome. Brown had been sexually assaulted and her throat had been slashed. Investigators quickly identified Osgood and Van Dyke as suspects. It was revealed that the couple had acted on a shared fantasy inspired by a Hollywood torture scene, leading them to commit the brutal assault and murder of Brown. In 2014, Osgood was convicted of 2 counts of capital murder, with the second charge stemming from the fact that the murder occurred during a sexual assault. Van Dyke, in a plea deal, received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Osgood's initial death sentence was overturned in 2016 due to improper jury instructions. However, during a resentencing in 2018, Osgood requested the death penalty, expressing a belief in an eye for an eye and stating that he deserved to die for his crimes. Over the years, Osgood's stance remained consistent. In a 2025 interview, he stated, "I took a life so mine was forfeited. I don't believe in sitting here and wasting everybody's time and everybody's money." He also expressed remorse for his actions, saying, "I regret taking her from them. I regret cutting her life short. I regret that I took one of God's children. And I regret the pain and suffering that I caused, not only for the victim and her family but to mine." On April 24, 2025, at the William C. Holman Correctional Facility in Atmore, Alabama, Osgood was executed by lethal injection. Witnesses reported that he used his final moments to apologize to Brown, saying, "Tracy, I apologize." He was pronounced dead at 6:35 p.m. James Osgood's final meal before his execution on April 24, 2025, was pizza. According to reports from the Alabama Department of Corrections, he declined lunch on the day of his execution but requested pizza for his last meal. Additionally, he had 11 visitors and one phone call that day, indicating he spent his final hours in contact with loved ones. James Osgood's case serves as a stark reminder of the depths of human depravity and the complexities surrounding capital punishment. His decision to accept his sentence and express remorse offers a rare glimpse into the mind of a man confronting the consequences of his actions. The Last Day, the life and execution of Michael Tanzy, killed by lethal injection. On a humid April evening in 2025, inside the cold, sterile walls of Florida State Prison, a curtain slowly lifted. Beyond the glass, Michael Anthony Tanzy lay strapped to a gurney, arms stretched wide, chest heaving. After 25 years of legal battles and appeals, the state of Florida was moments away from ending a life that had, in one brutal day, stolen another. Tanzy was 48 years old. For nearly half his life, he'd sat on death row for the kidnapping and murder of Janet Acosta, a beloved Miami Herald production supervisor. She was 48 too, vibrant, loyal, and hardworking. Her co-workers remembered her as kind, dependable, and never one to back down from a challenge. She'd been taking a short break from work when she crossed paths with the man who would end her life. It was April 25th, 2000. Janet had just stepped into her van during her lunch break in Miami when Tanzy approached her. He asked for a cigarette, just a simple request. But when she turned to respond, he forced his way inside. With a razor blade in his hand, he threatened her, bound her wrists, gagged her, and shoved her to the passenger seat. That moment began a terrifying ride south through the Florida Keys. Tanzy used Janet's ATM card to withdraw cash at several stops, each time with her in the van. Janet, tied and frightened, tried to stay calm. But Tanzy had already made up his mind. Eventually, they arrived in a remote area in Cudjoe Key. Janet, likely knowing what was coming, was forced to endure the horror in silence. Tanzy wrapped duct tape over her mouth, nose, and eyes. He made sure she couldn't breathe. Then he strangled her. He left her body hidden in the mangroves and drove on to Key West. There, he partied with friends as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Janet's friends and colleagues were panicking, calling, searching, waiting. A sharp-eyed officer later spotted her van and stopped Tanzy. He confessed and led them to where he'd left her. In 2003, Tanzy pleaded guilty. The jury didn't take long. 12 people agreed. He deserved the death penalty. But the execution wouldn't come for over 2 decades. His defense team tried everything to stop it. They said Tanzy was morbidly obese, over 380 pounds, and that lethal injection could cause him excessive pain. They cited sciatica, high blood pressure, and other conditions. But court after court rejected the appeals. Janet's family waited, year after year. Then came April 8, 2025, Tanzy's last morning. He woke up before dawn. At 4:45 a.m., the prison lights buzzed on. He ate his final meal: pork chops, bacon, a baked potato, corn, ice cream, and a candy bar. There were no calls made that day, and only one visitor, a spiritual advisor. He didn't ask for any special favors. He didn't make any final requests. He waited. By 6 p.m., a crowd had gathered, witnesses, reporters, and most importantly, Janet's family. Her sister, Julie Andrew, sat silently behind the glass. Inside the chamber, Tanzy was brought in and strapped down. A white sheet covered most of his body. 3 lines of intravenous tubing snaked from his arms to the machine that would end his life. A microphone was lowered to his mouth. He spoke, barely above a whisper. "I want to apologize to the family," he said. Then, he recited a Bible verse. Those were his final words. At 6:12 p.m., the first drug, a sedative, entered his system. Then came the paralytic, and finally, the heart-stopping chemical. For 3 minutes, his chest rose and fell rapidly. Then stillness. A guard leaned over, called his name, shook him gently. No response. At 6:21 p.m., Michael Tanzy was pronounced dead. "It's done," she told reporters later. Justice for Janet happened. My heart felt lighter, and I could breathe again. She never got to retire. never got to travel like she planned. But after 25 long years, the system finally gave her family what they'd waited for: accountability. Michael Tanzy's story ended the way many hoped it would. But for Janet's loved ones, the pain never really leaves. They live with the silence she left behind, and the memory of a woman who deserved so much more than a stolen lunch break. Macau Motti, South Carolina. Executed April 11th, 2025. Method: firing squad. In July 2004, a violent spree unfolded across 3 states. At its center was 21-year-old Michael Motti. Over 3 days, Motti committed a series of crimes: carjacking, robbery, and 3 murders. His first victim was Christopher Boggs, a convenience store clerk in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, whom Motti shot twice in the head. Days later, in Calhoun County, South Carolina, Motti murdered off-duty police officer James Myers, shooting him 9 times and setting his body on fire. Motti was apprehended in Florida, driving Myers' unmarked police truck. Motti was convicted of Myers' murder in South Carolina and sentenced to death. He received a life sentence in North Carolina for the murder of Boggs. After exhausting all appeals, including to the U.S. Supreme Court, his execution was scheduled for April 11, 2025. For his final meal, Motti requested ribeye steak cooked medium, mushroom risotto, broccoli, collard greens, cheesecake, and sweet tea. Motti chose execution by firing squad over lethal injection or the electric chair, believing it to be the least painful option. However, the execution did not go as planned. Reports indicate that only 2 bullets struck his chest, missing his heart, leading to a prolonged and painful death. Witnesses observed Motti crying out and gasping for air for over a minute before he was pronounced dead at 6:05 p.m. Motti did not make a final statement. Among the witnesses were Calhoun County Sheriff Thomas Summers and a member of Officer Myers' family. Notably, Myers' daughter chose not to attend, stating she had forgiven Motti and wished to focus on positive memories of her father. Moises Mendoza, Texas. Executed April 23, 2025. Method: lethal injection. In the quiet town of Farmersville, Texas, a community was shaken to its core on March 18, 2004. 20-year-old Rochelle O'Neill Tollison, a devoted young mother, vanished without a trace, leaving behind her 6-month-old daughter. The infant was discovered the next day, cold and alone, by Rochelle's mother, a harrowing scene that marked the beginning of a tragic investigation. Attention quickly turned to Moises Mendoza, a 20-year-old former classmate of Rochelle's. Just days prior, Mendoza had attended a gathering at her home. Under scrutiny, he confessed to a chilling sequence of events: abducting Rochelle, sexually assaulting her, and ultimately strangling and stabbing her to death. In an attempt to conceal his crime, he burned her body and left it in a remote field. Mendoza was arrested on March 24, 2004, after confiding in a friend about the murder. The friend alerted authorities, leading to Mendoza's swift apprehension. In 2005, he was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death. Over the next 2 decades, Mendoza's legal team filed multiple appeals, citing ineffective assistance of counsel, among other claims. However, all appeals were ultimately denied, with the U.S. Supreme Court rejecting his final plea in April 2025. On April 23, 2025, at the Huntsville unit in Texas, Mendoza faced his execution. Prior to the lethal injection, he addressed Rochelle's family directly, expressing deep remorse. "I am sorry for having robbed you of Rochelle's life," he said, naming each family member present. He acknowledged the pain he caused, particularly to Rochelle's daughter, stating, "I know nothing that I could ever say or do would ever make up for that. I want you to know that I am sincere. I apologize." Turning to his own loved ones, his wife, sister, and 2 friends, Mendoza spoke in Spanish. "I love you, I am with you, I am well and at," his words translated into English. As the lethal injection commenced, he made 2 audible gasps before falling into a deep snore. After approximately 19 minutes, he was pronounced dead at 6. In Texas, The tradition of customized last meals was abolished in 2011. Since then, all death row inmates receive the standard prison meal served on the day of their execution. Therefore, Mendoza's final meal was the regular prison fare provided that evening. The execution was witnessed by members of both families. Rochelle's mother, Pam O'Neill, later remarked, "He's been on death row 20. Daughter's death." Mendoza's case serves as a somber reminder of the enduring impact of violent crimes on victims' families and communities. While justice was served in the eyes of the law, the emotional scars remain for those left behind. This was how the lives of these men ended. Not with peace, not with dignity, but in the cold, sterile chambers of state-sanctioned death. Once boys with families, schools, dreams, somewhere along the road they strayed. Their lives became twisted by impulse, revenge, desperation, and murder. And the moment they crossed that invisible line, the one between thought and action, between anger and bloodshed, they were never the same again. Each of them stood before the law, tried by a jury, sentenced by a judge, and buried by the weight of their choices. Some spent decades on death row, clinging to appeals. Some accepted fate, others fought it till their final breath. They ate their last meals, simple or indulgent, and faced the silence that comes when there's nothing more to say, nothing left to save. Their victims' names echo louder than their own. And no matter how remorseful their final words may have been, the truth is simple. Crime took not just the lives of the innocent, but also consumed the very men who committed them. This was justice. This was consequence. This was the end. This was justice. This was consequence. This was the end. If stories like these move you, disturb you, or open your eyes to the reality of crime and punishment, don't scroll away. Subscribe to the channel, drop a comment below, and let us know which case stunned you the most. And as always, thank you for watching.